Hi and welcome to Building Australia. Today we're going to be looking at building membranes or building wraps, papers, known by many different names, but for the purpose of this episode, we're just going to call them membranes. Joining me today is Devin Grant from Performance Membranes, our sponsor of the show today. So let's get started.
Hey, thanks for having me.
No worries. Thanks for joining us, Devin. It's a real pleasure to have you here, mate, because I consider you to be kind of the authority on this area in high performance homes in Australia at the moment. So thank you so much for joining
It's
us.
all right. Take that with a grain of salt because I feel like there's many people in the industry you look up to, but it's nice to have strength in the space.
It is, yeah. And there's so much to learn.
Mhm.
So it's nice to be surrounded by people who are still willing to learn and admit that there's still so much more to learn. So
Mhm.
really appreciate you being here, mate.
All good.
So I thought we should have a little look at the history of these things because we've come a long way in the last 10 years, in Australia anyway, I think in the last 10 years. It started with this sort of a product, which is pretty familiar to both of us. You would have seen this one around Melbourne, this green or a blue one. It's foil. What's wrong with this, Devon?
It's a vapor blocker, so
Yep.
moisture can't get through it. And look, I learnt as a chippy, just like you, Andy. I used to be told to put it on the outside of the job, and then
Yep.
we'd put timber weatherboards over the top, and I had no idea what it
And
was
you
for.
didn't question why,
Yeah,
because that's what I do, boss.
yeah,
So inside the building, the vapor is hitting this essentially, isn't it?
yeah,
And not getting through.
yeah.
And what happens next?
It causes condensation because it ends up being a cold surface because the temperature, just like on a glass window,
Mm,
you have temperature difference between inside and outside, and those
yep.
single pane glazing windows in
Yeah.
winter in Victoria, we have that cold weather, and
Yeah.
then we get that condensation on the inside of the window.
And it's not even that different, is it? Like, I mean, the indoor temperature might be 20 degrees and the outdoor only needs to be sort of 15.
Yep,
And that's going to form that condensation. And
yep.
if nothing else, be very uncomfortable to live in. But more importantly, is slowly destroying the building.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's what internationally has been known as leaky building syndrome.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
we haven't really addressed it well in Victoria or in Australia. It's
Yeah.
starting to be known better, but in Tasmania, there's a handbook about condensation
Yeah.
management
Yeah.
and managing moisture in the building.
Yeah. This is where it begins. There's so much more to it. But for the purposes of these membranes, we can kiss this one goodbye.
Yeah,
No longer needed. Good riddance.
yeah.
We sort of moved to this guy, which is a vapor permeable membrane, a better solution to the foil one.
Yeah.
What do you know about this one, Devin?
So the difference between where the generation 4 products are now compared to what it is there's a few different brands who do this type
Yeah.
of membrane. This is a microporous product. So basically like the pores of your skin. So the moisture from the pores of your skin gets through this. The issue is that the moisture can go either way.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
watertight. So this could be used on your roof or the walls, and moisture can go either direction.
Particularly on the roof.
Yeah.
Maybe not so bad on the walls, but on the roof,
Yeah.
particularly, it's going to hold that water.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so you get that surface tension of the
Yeah.
moisture sitting on there rather than a wall, it just
Yeah.
can run off. And the part about that is we want moisture to get out of the building, but we don't want it to get back to it.
Yeah. So it's sort of a two-way street.
Yeah.
Definitely a step up from where we were with the foil sarkings, but still, we've since moved on from that.
It's-
Um,
Like that foil sarking, essentially it's like what we traditionally would have worn as a poncho. If we went to the footy or if we're at the snow and you wore a poncho on the outside to keep you dry,
Yeah.
that's one way of working, but it stops that moisture getting out.
Yeah.
It becomes a very uncomfortable environment.
Yeah.
Our houses have just traditionally been leaky. No one likes a draft, but that has actually helped our buildings dry
To
out.
dry out a bit, yeah. And of course, with the way we're sort of building now in terms of airtightness, it becomes more critical that we're looking at that moisture content, that condensation, and having a strategy.
Yeah.
Otherwise, then yeah, you're going to see the pernicious effects of mold and damp
Yeah.
just destroying buildings and people's lungs as well. It's
Yeah.
just not good for your
It's
health.
the health, that's
Yeah.
a massive benefit to doing things differently and ventilating well or that sort of thing.
Yeah.
On average, a house with 4 occupants creates 200 litres of water a week in condensation.
Just in the air.
So we want to
Yeah.
make sure that can get out
Yeah.
of the building as well. So it needs to breathe properly.
Yeah, and I think per square meter of external wall, it's about 9 litres per square meter. Is
Yeah.
that right?
Mhm.
It's hard to imagine, 9 litres of water on a wall that needs to leave the building one way or another. But it's huge if it's not controlled properly. So there we go. That was the previous iteration, which was a step up. But we've since moved to this one, which is very familiar to people in the passive house world.
Yeah.
This one, Devin, what's the advantage here?
So this is the Proclimer X Designer. So that's the wall membrane, this one here. But the big and key difference, it's a monolithic membrane. So there's no physical holes in this. The moisture or the condensation essentially moves through this membrane in a molecule form. So it's
Yeah.
a monolithic membrane.
Yeah. So this was developed almost at a microscopic level to make this technology work.
Yeah, so there's
Yeah.
no physical holes in the
Mm.
product, the
Yeah.
Proclimer product.
Yeah. So this is very much a one-way street.
Yeah,
So we're getting a weather barrier on this side. Plus, it's really durable.
yeah,
When you're handling this stuff on site, you don't have to worry about it. It's almost impossible to tear it.
yeah.
Great product to work with, but most importantly, we're, as you said, allowing that moisture to go through this way.
Yep, because
Yeah.
vapor drive always happens from hot to cold. And generally in Victoria's climate, Tassie, our
That's
colder climate zones,
mm,
we're always getting vapor drive. So moisture is wanting to get out of the building, just like if we're wearing a Gore-Tex jacket, like a
yeah,
winter's jacket,
yeah,
it's always wanting to get through. So on the inside, we have an unsealed fleece. And then outside we have a sealed fleece. In the middle is a TEEE film. And basically that is like a Gore-Tex.
yeah,
Gore-Tex is a brand, and this
yeah,
is how it works. So moisture moves through in a molecule form and gets pulled through the
yeah,
membrane.
yeah. Okay, so that's our walls.
Yep.
This same product, but we're going to use this mainly on the roofs. And I think the main difference for this one is it's got that extra durability. It's a lot more impact resistant and also UV protected.
Yeah. So this one's the Mento Plus, this one.
Yep.
The difference is that the National Construction Code for walls says light wall. So that's classified as light wall.
Yep.
Whereas the roof membranes, the Mento, it has to classify with the NCC in roofing, which is either a light, medium or heavy duty product. So this one's Mento 5000, Mento Plus. This is the medium duty product.
Yep.
So it has a tear resistance because it's about wind loads that go onto this membrane.
Yeah, of course.
We have a light duty, which really works under a tin roof because there's
Yeah.
not like wind loads on it like a tile roof.
Yeah.
Then you have wind loading, which is higher, so it's the tear resistance of the medium duty.
Yep.
And then we have Mento Ultra, and that is under a slate roof, alpine zones or high wind zones. It's really just
okay.
another 0.2 of a millimeter thicker than this.
Yeah.
So again, very strong product, very robust in how
Yeah.
strong it is.
Yeah.
But it also, both of these or any of the external weather tightness system is UV stabilized and weather resistant for 6 months.
Yeah.
in
Yeah. And
place.
the beauty of this is, especially if it's installed on a roof frame with OSB, this gets laid on really quickly, and within a day, the house is watertight.
Yeah.
And you could walk all over this and then do all the battens and counter battens of roofing, and not have to worry about it getting torn.
Damaged, yeah.
And even if it does occasionally, we've had scaffolders drop stuff on there, and it's easy enough as long as they tell us, just to sort of go along with a bit of tape and patch it.
Yeah.
And it's easy to do. It's as good as it was.
Yeah, the roof membranes are tested to 10 meters of water pressure.
Yeah.
So that's a 10-meter column of 100 mil pipe, and it holds water for 48 hours. No issues, not a drop of water. So it's a very robust, weather-tight layer. So you do lay it on your roof and you have got a watertight job.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of mold and condensation management
Yeah.
now in the NCC.
Keeping it out from the start.
Keeping moisture off our frame from the start.
Yeah.
Because it might
Yeah.
be kiln dried timber at
Yeah,
the
but-
start. Once it's on site and framed up,
Yeah.
your bottom plates are wet, everything's soaking up, and timber
Yeah.
just absorbs that. We want to keep that
Yeah.
water off the frame.
Especially the bottom plates. You can't help it. Even when you get caught out with rain sometimes and you just want to be able to dry it out. But the bottom plates hold that water for quite some time. I've actually gone around with a moisture meter at times and sort of had to pause the program for sort of 2 weeks and put fans in there to sort of bring that back down again, which is, a bit of an undertaking. It takes you away from the job of building. But this sort of solves all those problems. I mean, even in a rainy day, getting up there and putting this on, you're still miles ahead of where
Yeah.
we were before.
The tape that we'd use with both of these systems is called Extora. That's
Yeah.
UV stabilized for 6 months as well, but it's actually a acrylic that's not water affected. Most other tapes,
Yeah.
any other tapes on the market are a water-based acrylic,
Yeah.
and they actually emulsify once they get wet.
And they come off in the afternoon.
And the thing is, it's like, well, shouldn't these be exposed to weather? That's what it's there for, a weather-resistant barrier.
Yeah.
But that tape has 100-year adhesion testing.
Yeah,
So
it's pretty incredible, isn't
yeah.
it? The German duct tape, I call this. And like, There's really nothing else like it in the world. I actually patched up a tire on my son's bike with it the other day. He's riding around and skidding, and the air still hasn't leaked out.
Yeah.
So pretty amazing product, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of amazing products, and this is probably the one that's a bit new for people because it's not familiar for people to be talking about internal membranes. We're all
Yeah.
familiar with these wall wraps
Yeah.
on the outside of a building.
And that's traditionally, I think foil was introduced in the 60s.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're all got familiar, and our whole generation really, with foil sarking
Yeah,
as
yeah.
it's all on the outside. And then we talk about vapor permeable membranes, and you've got
Yeah.
your external wraps, and now we're introducing an internal wrap, which so
Yeah.
much of the rest of the world already does.
And I think in Australia, it's a very new concept. When you start to talk to people about making the building airtight, it does scare some people a little bit,
Mhm.
but it all comes down to that ventilation strategy, which these days is easily resolved. But this is predominantly the internal wrap that you guys would be recommending these days.
Yeah, so that's the only one we carry as an internal membrane. It doesn't matter your climate zone, it doesn't matter your country
Yeah,
that you live in.
yeah,
Intello is the product that you would use in Malaysia, Canada,
yeah,
Switzerland. Worldwide, it is proven that it works in any climate zone.
yeah,
Really, it comes back to just the external, maybe the weather, whether it's high humidity might change slightly on the wraps, but
yeah,
internally, we always have vapor that we're managing inside the
yeah.
building.
Because we're still humans inside a building, regardless
Mhm.
of where we live. It's the same effects. So how does this work? I know underneath these layers there's some pretty high tech manufacturing in here.
Yeah, so as a technology, what it essentially creates is an airtight building on the internal side of the building.
Yep.
So just like this little model, we're wanting to wrap all of our internal walls with the Intello. What happens is then it acts like a vapor blocker in a lot of instances. So it stops moisture getting into our wall structure to
Yep.
create mold or moisture condensation in our wall structure. So it protects our insulation layer and our building structure. Where we want to protect that building envelope is what we want to do. That's our 101, external, internal, protecting our envelope. When you introduce this though, you might have some vapor drive from the outside from high humidity, high temperature, because moisture can get through the external in a colder temperature or in the warmer temperature, because it's always wanting to get from hot to cold.
Hmm.
We need it to be able to dry out. So external, the external membrane, we can dry out from the outside once the warmer weather does come,
Yeah.
but Intello activates under certain temperatures and also the humidity levels, so that moisture can actually get through the Intello from the wall side, so from this back fleece
And
side,
drying that
and
cavity.
drying the
Yeah.
cavity. So
Yeah.
drying that insulation out.
Yeah.
So we want to do that. There's a lot of research internationally where North America, they wrapped with just basically plastic on
Mm.
the inside of their insulation
Yeah.
instead of the Intello,
Yeah.
and then they were getting moisture coming through the building, and then it would just hit the
Stopped.
plastic, and it's
Yeah.
just creating a mold stop.
Yeah.
So we're
Yeah.
wanting to make sure we're drying the building out from
Yeah.
both
Yeah.
directions.
If it can't dry, it's going to die. That's
Yeah,
pretty much the motto with timber. Most timber, even if it's treated or hardwoods, still needs to dry out.
yeah,
I mean, a lot of external timbers, they will last outdoors, but at some point they need some drying time as
yeah.
well. And particularly with timber framing, because we're not using treated pine framing.
No,
There's no real need to do that. But yeah, and typically it's always the bottom plates, isn't it? It's
yeah,
never a nice, easy bit of frame that you can just cut out
no.
and replace. It's the bottom plate, which is the spine of every wall. You take that out and
Mhm.
you've just got studs flapping around.
Yeah.
So yeah, even more important to control that. Brilliant. Well, look, the other thing I want to discuss here is basically the effects of this uncontrolled air going into our building cavities. You see it a lot with older homes where there's gaps in the external facade, whether it's the cladding and or the paper, and you've just got this they call wind washing into these cavities into the building. So
Mhm.
how do we start to look at addressing that?
Yeah, so I guess, from an external point of view, we need to be taping up all of our joins, taping
Mm,
onto our windows, fully basically making the external of the building a weather-tight layer.
a
So,
continuous
yeah,
layer.
continuous layer all the way
Yeah,
around. So it might be with tapes. There's lots of ways to do that. It's also sealing penetration. So for
yeah,
example, this is a Rowflex grommet, and we seal around a pipe penetration with all the cables coming through it, and we seal that penetration
yeah,
to stop uncontrolled air leakage. Air leakage is okay as long as it's in a controlled manner.
yeah,
So that might be with fans, it might
yeah.
be with ventilation and that sort of thing, which you'll
It's a little
no
bit,
doubt.
little bit like holding your breath underwater, isn't it? It's like
Yeah,
you can control this and you can come back for more air. If there's no strategy at all, you're
yeah,
just going to run out of air.
yeah.
So this is a great example for plumbers and sparkies because I think for a lot of trades, it's still a relatively new concept in terms of sealing up all their penetrations. The tendency used to just be with the membranes as well, just punch a hole
Yeah.
with your hammer, put your pipe in, put your cable in, and then jump back in the car. And like these strategies here, these grommets, they're really easy to deal with. And
Yeah.
this is available in every pipe size that we have in Australia,
Yeah.
isn't it?
It goes from 4 millimeters,
Yeah.
which is a K flex, all the way up to 350.
Yeah.
So you can put it on your triple
So
skin
no
fluid.
excuses for any of the trades, really,
No.
is there?
And it's interesting because the standard in New Zealand, like the Australian standard and New Zealand standard, they actually now require every penetration through any wall
Yeah.
membrane.
Yeah.
So the external weather tightness must be through a grommet.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's part of their system. So everyone does it there. It's controlling those penetrations,
Yeah.
not just for air leakage, but for, let's say it's a sewer pipe, a vent pipe on the top of your roof, and you've got a leak that comes through there. When you've got a fully wrapped roof, why do you have to have that?
Yeah.
Let's avoid these water
Yeah.
issues.
It's going to help with noise reduction as well.
Hmm.
Yeah. So what are these worth? These little grommets here, for example, what's one of these cost?
Like $7.
$7. So there's no reason really why a plumber couldn't have half a dozen of these or a dozen of these in your toolkit
Yeah.
and just pop them on the membrane as you're going. Yeah.
You have your Roflex 50 for your 50 mil sewer. That
Yeah.
might be for your vents or those
Yeah.
sorts of things. Then you have Roflex 100s, which do your 100
Yeah.
mil sewer pipe. It's easy to have a couple of them. It's
Yeah.
basically the perspective I like to explain is like it's like a deck tight for
Yeah.
your membrane.
Yeah. And most people are familiar with that, plumbers and sparkies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just a deck tight to your wall membrane, and
Yeah.
then you have your deck tight to your cladding system.
Yeah.
I always like to think of the external weather tightness system as you always have 2 layers of defense.
Yeah.
You have your cladding, your flashings, and your details on the external.
Yeah.
And then you have your insurance policy behind that,
Yeah.
which is your weather tightness, your tape, your grommets
Yeah.
underneath that.
And that's sort of the thinking for a lot of high quality manufacturing. Certainly, I know from the German perspective, a lot of things they do, they like to think doing it twice.
Mhm.
And you've got that built in sort of margin for error. If the first one fails ever so slightly, the second one's going to pick up the slack
Mhm.
straight away, zero problems.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really the how to penetrate. We also use our tapes. There's multiple tapes, as you know about.
Yeah.
Window details, but there's no two window manufacturers that are same.
It is
So-
a tricky one.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think the big thing about maybe other manufacturers to what the Proclima offer is it's a system-based approach.
Yeah.
So it's not just a wall wrap and that's
Mm.
it, and maybe some tape, but it's a system-based. Whether it's your
Yeah.
penetrations, tape flashings, tape details,
Yeah.
then it just is a bit more of a system-based approach.
And I know also you guys, like alongside with Think Windows, for example, can put together a whole package for people at design stage to say, well, this is what you're going to need, the quantities and the different products, so that when you go out there and do it, the problems have already been solved for you and you've got a strategy. Because I noticed on your window penetration there, this is probably a newer detail that not everyone sees. You've got this sort of sill tape there because that's obviously
Yeah.
where we've traditionally seen a lot of damage to the timber frame is just under the windowsill.
Yeah.
So tell us about this, Devin.
Can I just turn this around?
Yeah, sure. Make some space for you.
So this is part of the external weather tightness system. So we have that sill tape that we like to put on there called Extra Seal. And that's like, as a carpenter, you would think about as your black poly flash. Or traditionally in your older homes, you might imagine as an aluminium
Yeah.
flashing.
The little ones used to hammer in with those tiny little nails and
Yeah.
smash your finger. Yeah.
Yeah,
Problem
so-
solved.
So what we're doing though is we're wanting to protect our building envelope, just like I've been talking about. So instead of putting it on the window, we're protecting the building envelope and we're putting it on the sill.
Yeah.
Now this is our only product that we would currently have is not vapor permeable. So our tapes and everything like that, the moisture can still get through it. Okay, but
Yep.
this is non-vapor permeable. If you've ever done any renovations and that, where do we find water?
Always just there.
Always in that bottom
Yeah.
corner. Usually that's because you cut away also the black flashing or the aluminium little
Yeah.
flashing, and then this whole little corner is exposed. Whereas this Extra Seal tape is a butanol based tape and it stretches, so you can
Yeah.
stretch it around the corner and you still get full adhesion. So you're really covering those corners.
Yeah, and even if it doesn't, sort of iron on in a perfect fashion, it's still there. It's stuck for life, and it's going to shed that water continuously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing that's not shown clearly on here is just we like to as well encourage people to do a sill on grade. So it might be 5 degrees
Yeah.
or create a water stop detail.
Yeah,
So
which is simple enough just to add on top of that opening, just a bit of 10 by 20, just a slight bump, kind of like you'd have on a door sill, just somewhere for the water to stop and then has to make its way back out. But actually with the SIPS panels, I've spoken to one of the manufacturers about this, just tapering that sill
Yeah.
ever so slightly on every one.
You know what I've learnt recently is guys using Baltic pine weatherboard.
Just plant that on and then
Cheap off the shelf. It's
yeah,
not an expensive product.
yeah,
Put it down. That gives you your fall. You
yeah,
put your extra seal on top of that. Also,
yeah.
guys using that on top of their parapets.
I
So
think that's almost become a requirement now. But
yeah,
yeah, it
so
wasn't for a long time.
parapets
Yeah,
on grade, so you're not
yeah,
having these ponding issues on parapets on
yeah.
houses.
And it's shedding back into the house and not out of the house.
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess in this situation, it's just a matter of the SIPs provider or the frame carpenter allowing that extra 15, 20 mil of opening within the rough frame opening to accommodate that.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
So you've got another one there on that bit of hardwood there, Devin. Is that a spray on or a tape?
Yes, this is a new product. It's probably been out 12 months in Australia. It's
Yep.
been out long term overseas. It's called Adhero Visto.
Yep.
And what it is a stick on product straight onto flooring. I've just got this on a piece of hardwood. When I say flooring, I'm talking about like
Structural
a
flooring?
structural floor, like a
Yeah.
yellow tongue floor or an
Yeah.
OSB floor. And
Yeah.
what it is, you know, NCC, the requirement of managing mold and managing condensation for the builder is now a
Yeah.
major
Yeah.
part of their all permits, all code compliance.
Yeah.
Now, how do we stop moisture getting into our insulated floor cassettes?
Mm.
Is a major thought process now to make, because we've got these insulated floor cassettes for our 7-star energy rating. So we might have R4 under our yellow tongue,
Mm.
but we might have 400 mil under our joist to get in there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're not insulating after, we're insulating before,
Yeah.
putting our floor down, but then the risk of mold and condensation,
During the build.
yeah,
Yeah.
before our
Yeah.
building's weather tight, of
Yeah.
water getting into our floor. So this one's Visto. So this one's stuck down to that piece of hardwood.
Mm.
So that one's just a clear product, and it's really a construction
Yeah.
timeline product. It's not something that's built for the lifetime of the project.
Yeah.
So it would go across the whole floor as soon as your floor's laid.
Yeah.
Can be left exposed for 3 months
Yep.
on the floor. So that during that time, you really have the opportunity to build your frame, wrap your external walls, wrap your roof, and your watertight.
And it does take extra time, doesn't it?
hmm
Yeah.
Look, if you're doing a 200 square meter floor, you might have 3 guys and you'll have it done in a day.
Mm.
But the one thing, the benefit you'll see on the other side is you won't see any of your yellow tongue peaking.
Yeah.
So the job is watertight
Yeah.
in that way on the floor,
Yeah.
and you don't have to pull it up if it's if there's carpet or floating floors there or
It can
anything like
just
that.
stay
You can
there.
stay there.
Really good for a reno
hmm
too. If you happen to be doing like a second story reno,
hmm
great product to put down. So they're putting this down. I imagine they've laid their floor joists, they've laid their yellow tongue, maybe chalked out the lines, and
Yeah,
then go over the whole lot.
yeah. Otherwise, quite a few guys are just putting it down first and
Yeah.
then marking out their walls, chalking it on top,
Yeah.
and marking all the corners with a texture
Yeah.
on
Okay.
top of it, so you can re-chalk it because
Yeah.
it's not bedding in like
Yeah.
our Visto
Yeah.
is a fully sealed
Yeah.
surface.
Yeah.
So it's the chalk's not dying, the
It's not
chipboard.
sunk into
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, could you do it underneath and you just tape over it?
definitely could. It just depends how good your chalk lines are, I guess, if you see them. I
Mm.
haven't tried it too many times like that.
Yeah.
The Visto is really easy to put down
Yeah.
in that way, and it also has a slip rating. So it
Yeah.
means that
Okay.
once you actually have
Yeah.
it down, and it is a wet day,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
not worried about walking across it and you're going to slip over, like
Yeah.
I've seen in the past.
Yeah, and it's not like you can ever really expect to build a house and not get some sort of weather.
Yeah,
I mean, the more details is going to take a bit longer to build, so you have to expect that you're going to get a couple of rainy days at least.
yeah.
So this sort of protects that for the life of the building too.
Yeah, it was essentially produced for CLT construction overseas.
Yeah. Okay.
So throughout Europe, they do a lot of CLT cross-laminated timber construction.
Yeah.
So they don't want moisture to get to these surfaces that are being exposed as finished ceilings or
Yeah.
walls and those sorts of
Yeah.
things. So it can be pulled off very easily
Yeah.
and left in that
Yeah.
way.
I
So
I suppose also with CLTs, you want that moisture content, that timber to be as close as it was when it left the factory, so that
yeah.
when it becomes a home again, it's what would it be, 12%, 13%?
Yeah, I think it's between 7 to 12 or something like that,
Yeah.
or 7 to 14. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So
Yeah. Well, there you go. So the only other one that we haven't seen yet, which I've seen on YouTube, is a spray-on
yeah.
membrane, and I imagine it's going to be quite expensive, but particularly versatile for retrofit projects.
Yeah, so it's called Aerosana Viscon, and we've sold a little bit of it. It's more those inner city renovations where people are wanting to do passive house or air tightness.
Yeah.
They might be connecting to a triple skin brickwork,
Yeah.
and they need to make a connection between the new floor and that wall.
And then
So
you
it's
can
getting that connection there, or maybe there's a couple of projects which have been block work and they want to make sure they're airtight.
Yeah.
So that can be a painted on surface.
It's just, I guess it's spray on or brush on, isn't it?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Sold in a tub, so it can be a spray or brush.
Yeah. And how do you reckon that compares cost-wise to like a normal membrane like this?
This is going to be so much quicker and cleaner
Yep.
at the end of the day, and
Yeah.
easier for trades to interact with. Our tapes will still stick to the Aerosana Viscon,
Yeah.
so we can still adhere to them and connect to them,
Yeah.
but it's easier to patch a piece of membrane with a bit of tape and connect. It's going to be more of a unique application in that way.
So it's going to be a great example. It's like a junction. We've got like roof meets wall, and it's just a really awkward sort of shape, whether it's rafters or floor joists and some old brickwork where you couldn't expect the tape to really work. So you just
get
go up there
around
and
those.
spray that bit.
Yeah. It's a spraying just to get that connection. Then we could, let's say we sprayed a junction where a old rafter or floor joist is running into a brick wall.
Yeah.
We might need to spray around that, but then we could put our membrane onto that and tape it to that Viscon. So it's just doing the junction work, essentially.
So it's kind of a belt potentially through a building where you've got all these old materials sort of coming together where you couldn't possibly tape.
Yeah, that's right.
No, we might be looking at doing this on a project next year, so I'll be curious to see that one when when we get our hands on it. So there you go. That concludes our conversation about membranes, and I hope that's helpful to you all. If you would like to know more about these for a future project, please have a chat with Devin. He can give you all the right advice before you start. Don't leave this until when you are midway through the build and trying to come up with solutions. Have the conversation beforehand. It'll save a lot of headaches.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Andy.
Thank you, Devin. It's a pleasure.
It's great. Thank you.
See you next time.
See ya.